Hey everyone, get ready to dive into something pretty amazing.
Hmm.
Today we're going to explore those classic stories, the parables of Jesus. But here's the twist. We're looking at them through the lens of A Course in Miracles. It's like finding hidden messages in something you thought you knew by heart.
It really makes you realize how much wisdom is packed into those ancient teachings, doesn't it?
It really does. And the book we're diving into today, well, it really brings that home. It's called Las Parábolas de Jesús a la luz de un Curso de Milagros.
Which basically means the parables of Jesus in the light of A Course in Miracles, for those of us who don't speak Spanish.
Exactly. And it does exactly that and shines a whole new light on these stories. But, and I know some of you might be wondering this, hold on, are we about to get all religious on this deep dive?
That's a fair question, and it's a really important distinction to make, actually. We're not here to push any kind of religious agenda or anything like that. Think of it more like we're using Jesus as kind of a prime example, someone who really embodied those ideas of love and forgiveness that A Course in Miracles is all about.
It's about recognizing those universal truths, right? That anyone can connect with.
Exactly. Like, remember that whole thing about Jesus and the Roman taxes? He wasn't saying, go ahead, start a revolution. What he was pointing to was a totally different kind of revolution. The one that happens inside us, in our minds. When we make that choice to choose love over fear.
It's like an inside-out revolution.
Yes. And this book really drives that point home. It actually makes this bold claim and says that if Jesus were here teaching today, his message of like resurrection and everything, this book says that Course in Miracles would be it.
Wow. That's a pretty bold statement.
It is.
Makes you think about these parables a little differently, doesn't it? Speaking of parables, how about we dive into one that I think tends to leave people scratching their heads a bit? The Prodigal Son. You familiar with that one?
Oh, absolutely. Everyone's heard that one, but I think it's really easy to get caught up in the surface level, all the drama.
Totally. Like the brother who's all jealous.
Yeah.
And the father who's like way too forgiving. What's up with that?
Mm-hmm.
But this book we're looking at, it flips that whole script on its head. It straight up says that we were the prodigal son.
Yes. And it goes on to make this fascinating connection to the idea of squandering our inheritance.
Okay, so I'm picturing like a pile of gold that we're just like throwing out the window.
Right. But it's not about actual money or possessions or anything like that. It's talking about something much deeper, this incredible power that we all have within us.
Okay, vamos.
It's like that creative spark, that essence of God within each and every one of us.
Okay, I'm with you. So how do we go about squandering this? I like that word, squandering.
Well, just think about it. How often do we get so caught up in these illusions, Stuff that ultimately doesn't even matter. We're chasing validation, possessions, those fleeting moments of pleasure, and meanwhile, we're neglecting that inner treasure that we all have.
We forget what we're really worth.
Yes. And so coming home in this parable, it's not about physically going back to some place. It's about remembering who we truly are.
It's like that whole thing, A Course in Miracles talks about remembering our true nature, our divine nature.
Exactly. And there's this one detail, just a word really, that this book uses that really stuck with me. It calls us God's treasure. You're not just loved by God, you're treasured.
That is beautiful. And it actually makes me think about another parable. You know the one with the workers in the vineyard?
Mm-hmm.
The one where everyone gets paid the same, even if they started working at different times.
Ah, yes. The one that tends to ruffle some feathers.
Right. It feels kind of unfair. But this book, it suggests that our reaction to that feeling of, hey, wait a minute, actually reveals something super interesting about like how our egos work.
Exactly. Because the ego loves to compare, right?
Mm-hmm.
Always judging, figuring out who's worthy, who deserves what. And this parable, it throws a wrench in that whole system. It's basically saying that God's love, not a reward system. It's not like, oh, you did good, here's some love, you messed up, no love for you.
And not something you earn. It's just there.
Yeah.
Always.
Yes. And it's available to everyone, no matter what, just like the sun shines on everyone.
I don't have to play favorites.
Exactly. And the source is suggesting that real peace, like true inner peace, comes from accepting that love, not trying to earn it.
It's that whole shift, right? From that scarcity mindset, like there's not enough love to go around, to an abundance mindset, like, whoa, there's plenty of love.
Precisely. And that shift right there, that's at the heart of what A Course in Miracles calls forgiveness.
And speaking of forgiveness, this book uses a kind of messy analogy, I guess you could say, to shake up the way we usually think about forgiveness.
You're talking about that whole new wine in old wineskins thing.
That's the one. Have you ever actually, like, tried to do that, put new wine in an old wineskin?
Let's just say it doesn't usually end well.
I can imagine.
That old wineskin,
Yeah.
all stiff and dried out. It just can't handle that fresh, fermenting energy of new wine. Just bursts. And that's what the source is getting at. That's what happens when we try to cram the radical kind of forgiveness that A Course in Miracles is talking about, into those old, rigid ideas we have about blame and judgment.
So what we need are new wineskins.
Exactly.
New ways of looking at this whole forgiveness thing.
New ways of thinking, of seeing the world. And luckily, this book gives us some clues about what those new wineskins might look like. It all boils down to shifting how we see where harm comes from.
Okay, now you've got me really intrigued.
But we can unpack that a little bit later.
Now you're just teasing me. All right, really, what other parables does this source explore? What other mysteries are we about to uncover?
Speaking of shifting our perception, there's this other parable that the book unpacks in a way that I thought was really interesting. The parable of the wheat and the tares. Have you heard that one?
Oh, yeah, that one always kind of freaked me out. The whole, separating the good from the bad, it felt very Judgment Day to me.
Yeah. Right, like this big cosmic sorting hat. But what this book does is it offers a completely different take on it. It's saying that this parable, it's not about some far-off future event. It's about something we experience all the time. That process of growing, transforming.
Okay, now I'm really curious. Tell me more.
So think of it this way. You are the field, right? And inside you, you've got these seeds of potential, right? The wheat that represents all that good stuff. Love, kindness, all those qualities that A Course in Miracles is always encouraging us to cultivate.
Right.
But then, you've got these tares too, right? All those pesky, weedy thoughts, fear, doubt, all that stuff. But they're just part of the landscape,
It's like you're going along trying to be all love and light, and then, bam, some old resentful thought pops into your head.
Exactly. And what do we usually do? We want to yank those tares right out.
Get rid of them.
Gone. We get impatient with ourselves. We think we should be further along, more perfect.
Been there.
But you know what this source reminds us? Spiritual growth takes time, just like you can't force a plant to grow faster. Right? Same with us. And yanking out those tares before they're ready might damage the good stuff too.
So it's more about, patience.
Yeah.
Trusting the process.
Exactly. And that patience thing applies to our relationships too,
Oh, I see where you're going with this.
Think about a time you were just ready to give up on someone, write them off because of their flaws. Well, this parable, it's encouraging us to see those flaws as the pears, not the whole person, just something that's still growing.
It's like that saying, be kind. Everyone you meet is fighting a hard battle. We don't always know what people are dealing with, what kind of tears they're struggling with inside.
Yeah. Yes. And we never really know, do we? Which, this actually makes me think about another big part of the Course, the whole idea of giving miracles.
Ooh.
Yes, love that. And the source actually connects that idea to the parable of the talents. Remember that one? The whole burying the talent in the ground thing?
Oh, yeah. That one always makes me a little uncomfortable, honestly. Am I doing enough with my talents? Talk about an inner critic trigger.
Right. Am I fulfilling my purpose? So much pressure.
Exactly. But the thing is, this parable, it's not about actual talents. Not really. It's about recognizing those gifts we've all been given. Love, compassion, that ability to forgive. It's about that inner treasure we were talking about earlier. So it's not about trying to get more love, but realizing we already have it. And then
sharing it. Exactly. And this source makes a really powerful connection there. It's saying that is what giving miracles is all about. Taking all those gifts, all those experiences of healing, transformation, all that good stuff, and letting it flow out from us.
So it's not enough to just sit here and feel grateful for the love and forgiveness we've received.
Well, gratitude is a good start, but yeah, there's more. We're meant to be conduits for that love.
How do we do that?
It doesn't have to be some big grand gesture. It could be something small, a kind word to a stranger, really listening when someone's hurting.
Just letting that love flow through us.
Yes. Like a never-ending spring. Okay, so we've talked about trusting the process, about how important it is to share love and forgiveness. What other little nuggets of wisdom does this book have for us?
Right. There's got to be more.
Well, I know it might seem like we're circling back a bit here, but bear with me. Remember those workers in the vineyard?
You mean the ones who all got paid the same, even though it seemed kind of unfair?
That's the one. And the book, it uses that very natural human reaction we have, that feeling of no fair, to point out something really profound about A Course in Miracles. Because remember, God's love, it's not something we earn by working hard, putting in the time. It's a gift. Pure and simple, and it's given equally to everyone.
Like letting go of that need to compare, that constant need to prove ourselves, and instead just relaxing into this present moment, just being.
Yes, exactly. It's not about how long we've been on the spiritual path or how many good deeds we've racked up. We are all worthy, right here, right now.
That is such a tough concept to really grasp. But when you do, it's incredibly freeing. It's like all that pressure is gone.
It is. And this parable, it's like it dismantles that whole system, right?
Yeah.
That hierarchy that our egos love to create, that some people are more advanced than others.
Right, like there's some kind of spiritual ranking system.
Yeah.
It's good to be reminded that we're all just in this together, stumbling along,
Right.
learning, growing. Which, speaking of, there's another parable that I always kind of felt like I was failing at. The parable of the sower. You know that one?
Oh, yeah. The one with the seeds falling on different types of ground.
Yes. Like, am I the rocky ground?
Yeah.
Am I just not fertile enough for these spiritual seeds to grow?
It's so easy to internalize it that way, right? But this source offers such a beautiful perspective shift. Because the thing is, the sower doesn't stop sowing just because some of those seeds might not be landing in the ideal spot,
So it's not about the outcome,
Yeah.
but about just doing it.
Yeah.
The act of sowing itself.
Exactly. And that relates directly to how we share A Course in Miracles in our lives, too. We're called to be sowers, spreading those seeds of love and forgiveness everywhere we go, even if we don't see those seeds sprout right away, even if some people aren't receptive.
We just keep on sowing.
Exactly. Trusting that those seeds will find their way to fertile ground, and when they do, they might flourish in ways we can't even imagine.
It's about surrendering to the timing of it all.
Yes, divine timing. But still doing our part, right?
Exactly. Okay, so that's trusting the process, sharing love and forgiveness. What else you got?
Okay, before we wrap up this whole parable party, there's one more that I want to touch on. I think it's a powerful metaphor for the whole process of spiritual transformation. The parable of the net. Ringing any bells.
Okay, remind me about that one.
It's the one where the fishermen go out, they cast their net into the sea, they pull in all these fish, some good, some bad.
Oh, yeah, and then they have to sort through everything.
Exactly. And again, it seems like there's this element of judgment, right? Deciding what's good, what's bad, what's worthy.
Totally.
But the source points out, this is another one of those parables that often gets misinterpreted. It's not about some outside force passing judgment down on us. It's about what's happening inside each of us. That process of discernment that we all go through as we walk the spiritual path.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So the net, that's like our own minds.
Yes.
And we're casting it out into this vast ocean of thoughts and experiences. And then we have to decide what to keep and what to toss back.
You got it. It's about becoming aware of what's swimming around in our own minds, recognizing that not every thought we have is true or even helpful. And then it's about making conscious choices about what we're going to focus on, what we're going to nurture.
That reminds me of that line in A Course in Miracles. You are very welcome to my forgiveness because I have forgiven myself.
Yeah.
And it's not about saying that harmful thoughts are okay. It's about seeing their unreality, choosing a different way of seeing.
Exactly. And what's really important here is that this whole sorting process, it's not about becoming perfectly pure, getting rid of every negative thought completely.
Because let's face it, those bad fish, those fear-based thoughts, they're going to pop up.
Oh yeah, they're going to keep swimming into our nets. That's just part of being human. But the thing is, we get to choose how much power we give those thoughts.
We have a choice.
We absolutely do. We can just observe them without judgment, see them for what they are, these illusions, and then we can choose to focus on the good fish, the thoughts that are in alignment with love, with peace and joy.
We become more skillful fishermen of our own minds. I love that. This has been amazing. I feel like we could keep unpacking these parables forever.
Right. There's just so much there. And you know what I love about this book? It doesn't try to tell you what to think about these stories. It invites you to find your own meaning.
I know, right? We could go on and on. But before we get totally carried away, let's bring it back to you, our listeners.
Yeah.
Because, that's what this is all about, right? What does it actually look like to take these stories, these parables, and really see them through the lens of Course in Miracles? What changes?
Well, I think it starts with realizing that these stories, they're more than just, historical anecdotes or whatever. They're not just moral lessons. They're invitations, really, to go deeper, to find those layers of meaning that really speak to us, in our own lives, on our own journey.
They're not meant to be taken literally.
Yeah.
But they're supposed to spark something within us.
Yes, exactly. Think of the parables like seeds, little seeds of wisdom that were planted a long, long time ago. And even today, they still have the power to blossom, especially when we connect them with these principles from A Course in Miracles.
And what I really like about this book, the one we've been exploring, is it doesn't shy away from the more challenging parts of all this. The
Yeah.
parts that make you kind of go, wait, what? Like this whole idea of shifting our perception of where harm comes from, that's a biggie.
It is. It's huge. And yeah, I mean, it can feel a little mind-boggling, right? Remember that whole new wine in old wineskins thing?
Yeah.
Those old wineskins, those are like our deeply ingrained patterns. The blame, the judgment, seeing ourselves as separate from everyone else, and those old ways of thinking. They just can't contain the kind of radical forgiveness that A Course in Miracles is talking about.
Okay, so then how do we make room for those new wineskins? How do we actually start to live this kind of forgiveness?
Well, this source reminds us that it all starts with awareness, just noticing. Noticing when we're falling into those old thought traps, those knee-jerk reactions like, grrr, it's their fault or whatever.
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Right. But instead of beating ourselves up for having those thoughts, because remember, those tears, they're going to pop up from time to time. It's totally normal. But we have a choice. We can choose to just gently shift our focus.
It's like hitting the pause button before we react.
Yes. Exactly. Giving ourselves a chance to choose a different response. Ask ourselves, okay, what would it look like to approach this situation with love? What if, instead of focusing on who's to blame, I just offered compassion to myself and to this other person?
Which isn't about saying, oh, it's okay that you did that. Not at all.
Yeah.
It's about seeing things from a higher perspective.
And that's where these parables, I think they can be so powerful. They give us these little glimpses into another way of seeing the world, where forgiveness is possible, where love is truly unconditional. And you know what? The more we spend time with these stories, letting their wisdom really sink in, the more we start to see those same possibilities showing up in our own lives.
It's like we're training our minds to see the world through a totally different lens.
Mm-hmm.
The lens of love, which really, that's what A Course in Miracles is all about, isn't it?
Yeah. It really is. Remembering that we're not alone on this path. We have these ancient teachings to guide us, these stories that have survived for centuries, and then we have this incredible resource, A Course in Miracles. It helps us take all that ancient wisdom and make it real in our modern lives.
It's like having a treasure map, right?
It is.
And the treasure, it's been within us all along.
Beautifully said. And as you go about your day-to-day, dear listener, we invite you to carry these parables with you in your heart. Look at them with fresh eyes and just ask yourself, what if I choose to see myself and everyone I meet? What if I choose to see them through the lens of love? You might just be amazed by the miracles that start to unfold.